Recording started. Stream started. Let's go live. Hello, everybody out there. Thank you for watching today's stream. This is Composer Notes episode number 3, and today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite pieces I've written recently called Summit. Let me pull my notes up here. So, a little bit of a background about this piece. Summit was written in 2018. It's a grade 5, and the overall concept of the piece is about overcoming a great challenge and reaching the pinnacle of that goal. So it kind of describes a journey, and the journey might be tough and, long, but like when you finally reach that destination, the view, that sense of accomplishment is well worth everything about it. For me personally, I had overcome a really huge personal challenge when I was writing this, and I wanted a celebratory piece to kind of personify my journey. This happened to work out really great in conjunction with that. Dr. Ken Singleton at the University of Northern Colorado was starting his final year there in his long tenure. And so this was kind of let's write a piece for him to celebrate the start of his final journey there before he goes into retirement. The way I know him is his group and him have been the recording studio for my publisher, Grand Mason Music, for 20 plus years, and it's been a great relationship with them, and they always give great feedback, and they always give phenomenal recordings. So the recording we'll be using today for the piece is the recording of them doing the world premiere, which happened October 2018, I believe. So let's talk a little bit about why I happen to choose 7/8 as a meter for this whole piece, and the majority of the piece. So Summit is unusual, and it's written mainly in 7/8. I firmly believe that it's an underused meter. Asymmetrics and mixed meters are really great catalysts for creativity and compositions. I also feel like it's somewhat really unused in today's modern compositions. Like, you see it a lot more, so it's great that it's starting to become a little bit more popular, but conductors still tend to stray away from it. I also feel like this is kind of all was started by Claude T. Smith and his use of 7/8, but he didn't. He would just do it like in like one or two measures to kind of throw off the group that was performing it. So there's kind of three for 7/8 meter. Like, there's kind of three big variations of it. And let me go ahead and pull that up here. Okay, that's not going to work like the way I thought it would. Okay. Oh, there we go. Yep, so let me go and pull that over here, and let me show you that. So here's the big 3 meters. So you can either add 3 plus 2 plus 2, which is pretty common, 2 plus 2 plus 3, which is also common, and then 2 plus 3 plus 2. When a piece usually has a 7/8 meter, it's usually written on the first 2 meters, but the third is not as common. From a conducting standpoint, it's easier to have a grouping of 3 eighths on a strong beat, either that being the first beat or the last piece of the group. In more modern music, it doesn't really matter. These beat structures don't really matter. So, but for common band music literature, you usually see the first meter or the second meter like that. In my piece, I primarily write in the first 2 meters, and mainly just a 2 plus 2 plus 3. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the piece a little bit here. I will go ahead, and this is the recording from the University of Northern Colorado Wind Ensemble on October 2018. All right, we'll go ahead and stop it right there. That was from measure 1 up to measure 17. Excuse me. So, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what's happening here. So at the very beginning of this whole piece, we have this kind of like really kind of like mystical, magical statement from the woodwinds, and this idea kind of comes back and forth throughout the piece. The other big introduction material we have here is this 4-note motive, where we kind of have bell chimes coming in. When performing the piece, that material is really, really important. And woodwinds also need to be important. Also need to be watching their dynamic phrasing here. Here in the alto saxophone, we actually have the first introduction of the motive that drives this whole piece. This little asymmetric motive here, and that becomes what I build 95% of this whole piece around, is these measures. From a conducting standpoint, I provide the timpani as kind of like this driving pulse. So once you, as a conductor, get locked in with your timpani, you should be good to go, and it kind of gives everybody kind of a chance to get a feel and groove through the rhythm. Especially during the first couple of rehearsals, you've got to have solid locking in tempo. It is a little fast at 170. I've heard it performed at 155, 160, and that's okay, but I really like that 170, and you'll see why later. So let's go ahead and move on to this next section here. Let's listen to rehearsal B up to the first big hit point, and I'll kind of go over some stuff in there. Okay, so that was the first kind of big buildup that we have in the piece here. The important things to notice is that anytime anybody has this little da 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 da, anything like that, that really has to be brought out. This ostinato pattern that the woodwinds has provides this kind of like glue underlying foundation. It's not quite as important, but it is supposed to be prominent and kind of keeps the piece and sticks it together. I'm sorry, I'm using so much. I decided to start using this build-up texture here. It's really important that every time that one of the brass comes in with this entrance here, they really can kind of be stuck up. So like the low brass come in, back off, trombones come in, back off, etc., etc., leading up to this molto rallentando, I'm sorry. The way that I've seen some conductors conduct this is they'll conduct beat 1 and 2, but then they'll use the last 4 eighth notes as their own individual beats to really, really slow it down. And the reason why we want that is because on the next page, we are going from 170 to 110. And that's really important that we get that really slow, because it creates this big, giant, epic moment within the piece. So let's go ahead and listen to this big, giant, epic moment up to this 7/8 bar over here. Okay, so this was rehearsal D to rehearsal E. So let's go ahead and talk about this a little bit. Let's start with the percussion down here. So tam-tams and concert crash cymbals, you really got to let those ring. Really, really important to kind of give that grand sense of magnitude. I really like using those instruments in particular to help convey that sense of magnitude and just giantness. So if you're a brass player and you are having basically moving notes on beat 3, including the Barry Saxon bassoon, really bring those out. You guys are the important idea. You're the chord change. So we're going from a major chord to a minor chord, and you guys are the only changing notes there. So bring those out. The horns and alto saxes, this is your time to shine, really, in the piece. you have this 4-note motive that we had at the beginning, but now it's a lot more sped up. I would love to have more horn texture than alto sax texture here and tenor sax texture here. It would, if you can balance it that way, that's great, but this is really supposed to be the epic horn moment that's supported by the alto saxes. For the woodwinds, it looks like a lot of tough runs, but I promise you, they're not too terribly bad. There are some trickier kind of notes, like we do, like in the clarinets, for example, we do have some E sharps going into F sharp. I'm sorry, but harmonically it makes a lot of sense because of the key that we are pretending to be in, but not really in. For the woodwinds, this kind of rundown tier to these last two measures for the Rolantano also once again looks scary, but just take your time, really practice that over and over again. As long as you're getting a majority of the notes right, I don't care. It doesn't need to be 100% accurate. It's more of an effect than anything. You're starting on a high A flat and then going down to a G. So these last two measures really, really stretch out those quarter notes. Make this Rolantano absolutely massive and really stretch the dynamic phrasing out and make it as big as possible because we're about to lead into another really fast section. So it's kind of a nice little breather break. So let's go ahead and listen to the next couple of sections, and then I'll discuss some notes about those. So this is starting at rehearsal E. Okay, so that was rehearsal E, measure 49, to up to rehearsal G. So in this section, we've just finished the first big climactic moment of the piece, and now we're kind of bringing back some familiar material with these woodwind ostinato patterns, and we introduce a new woodwind ostinato pattern on top of it. So we have both a lyrical and a non-lyrical ostinato pattern that's kind of layered on top of each other. I like doing stuff like this because it creates interesting textures within the registers and like the soundscapes. So it allows, it's kind of like, a mountain, right? A mountain's not going to always be perfectly smooth. There's going to be rocky parts as well. So that's where this kind of idea came from. And in here we have the first true majestic statement of the motive where we kind of have a call and answer between the trumpet section and the low woodwinds. So trumpet players at this part, this is your chance to be the hero. Everybody's in unison, nice loud forte with a good clean breath of air, and it's going to sound great. Make sure that you're paying very close attention to the accent marks, and don't cut those chord notes too short, but making sure that, they've got their full length of sound as well. So in this coming up section here, same thing again, we go into this nice unison statement and we bring back some of the original woodwind runs, and leads up to this 2/4 bar right before letter G. So really bring out that decrescendo on that 4/4, and then really overemphasize the crescendo on the 2/4. It really helps build up to that dynamic effect, and it comes out really nice and clean. UNC's performance of this I thought was really well done, and they got that pretty much first try, so I was very happy with it. So let's go ahead and, one more thing with this. This is the first time that I'm switching from 2 + 2 + 3 7/8 to 3 + 2 + 2 7/8. That happens on measure, let me scroll down, 65. So I mark every time I switch from the metric meter, like the way beat groupings happens. Makes it a little bit easier on you as a conductor so that you're not caught by surprise in the notation. So that just something to be aware of, and don't worry, that's also marked in all the parts as well, so everybody knows what's going on as well. So let's go ahead and listen to letter G up to the next big moment. right, let's go ahead and stop right there for a second. This is a really nice chop break for the brass. They've been playing a lot of hard stuff at this point. So it kind of gives a chance for you to shine with your woodwinds. I did throw in some metric variations of 7/8 in there. Once again, I noted it. So just be, when you're doing your score study, make sure you're well aware of that. We introduced kind of this new secondary motive here as well that happens in the low woodwinds. So bassoon players really bring that out. That does come important later on down the line. So I'm kind of planting the seed there as a hint of like, hey, what things are about to come. Once again, brass players, just be supportive. Use big, strong, aggressive air here as well. So let's go and listen to letter I up to letter K. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and I think it makes sense as the next phrase. Okay, we'll cut off right there before the next big hit moment. So we are back in a 4/4 meter, and one of the things I did is we kind of take the original motive and I've transformed it from being 7/8 metric to 4/4 metric. Originally, when I wrote this section, I had it everything as a 7/8 metric, but it made these bell tones down here metrically impossible. So the simplest way that I could reduce this was add an extra eighth note to every measure, and then it made these bell tone effects down here a lot more easier to perform, obviously. And I really did like the stretched out motive. There was even one variation where I actually almost made the entire piece in 4/4 and had this as the motive, but I'm glad I only brought it out for this one little section. So let's talk about these brass bell tones. The front of the attacks need to be, of course, very heavy because it's bell tones, but you're doing multiple of them in a row, especially down here like in the euphonium and tuba parts. You need to make sure that your attacks are consistent so that it doesn't sound like you're getting louder or softer, that you're just a nice consistent forte, piano, bell tone every single time, and the rest of the dynamics will kind of take care of themselves. So, especially leading up to letter J, making sure that we're not getting too loud too fast is really important. The other thing is trombones, you do kind of have this like little dirty glistening here. If you want to cut that out, that is fine. But if you can also make that as dirty as possible, it would sound a lot, like the effect would come out a lot better and would help making sure that the entrance of the trumpets here is a lot cleaner. So if any brass have this kind of fanfare idea, this does come back later, so making sure you're really bringing it out as well. Woodwinds help kind of reemphasize that as well. So same page, next page, same idea here. Same kind of bell fanfares, but we've got another multiple rallentando into a really kind of nice key change here, from C major to D major, and really bring out that rallentando. UNC's recording of it was perfect, and I really loved how much rallentando they were able to put behind that, and it just makes this effect of returning back to the original tempo all the greater. So let's go ahead and listen to this next section all the way up through the crazy key signature changes, and we'll kind of break it down. Okay, we'll stop it right there. So this is a similar section to the first big kind of epic high point. This is like, imagine this almost being the second peak of the piece. A lot of great things going on. We have that woodwind ostinato again. That could be a lot more present in there. This is the horn's time once again to really, really shine. You're not getting double. There's no one there to back you up. It's all you guys. Do me proud, please. Make Mahler proud as well. Trumpets and trombones, back off a little bit. You don't have to be as present. There's a lot of great moving stuff going on, and you guys are kind of the supporting material. Anytime that you have this idea, this da 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 da, anytime you guys have that, bring those moving notes as well, but the elongated tie notes, back those off just a little bit, because there's a lot of interesting material going on in the woodwinds, and we want that to be heard as well. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about this next section before we actually listen to it. A lot of people have looked at this and went, what the hell? What are you thinking? It's mix meter on steroids, and it looks extremely intimidating. So my justification for it was I wrote it the way I wanted it to sound, and then I added the meters, and I try to put the meters in positions that it makes sense logically from the phrasing standpoint, but also from a conducting standpoint, it's easy to conduct and allows for easy rehearsals as well. So we'll go ahead and listen to this section, and then I'll add a few more details about it. Okay, so when you hear it, you think, "Oh, that's not that bad." And honestly, it's not bad at all. They did a lot of great things with it dynamically, and I really like what the trombones were doing with their glisses. Like I love putting little moments like this where the trombones just get to do really fun, obnoxious stuff, and this was a great example of that. So, with that being said, it's really important that you do not rush this whole entire section. You got to keep a consistent tempo, and I know that's going to be really hard with it having this mixed meter thing, but you just really got to lock that in, and you're going to have some percussion parts along the way that are going to help reconfirm the meter that you're in and making sure that you guys can all stay together as well. These woodwind runs, I decided as well to kind of help add in to make sure that, hey, that they're we're not going to completely fall apart during this whole section. So that leads up into rehearsal M, and we do yet another key change back to B flat. And so let's go ahead and listen to this next section. Okay, so let's go and talk about that. In this section, we kind of back away from all the bombastic material that we've just had, and now we're kind of into this nice soft lyrical section where I've put in these solos with these call and answers. Of course, bring out the calls, bring out the answers as well with all the solos, making sure that none of the ostinato kind of behind the scenes woodwind stuff doesn't really stick out too much. And here in the piccolo again, we also hear the original idea that we heard right at the start. This gives a chance for every section to kind of shine and really brings out the true wind ensemble-like material for this piece. So let's go ahead and listen to letter O. I think I'm going to do letter O to Q. Let's listen to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about this section here. This is a chance once again for your woodwinds to really shine here, and I bring out the parts of the original motive, and I'm doing some development here where I'm kind of stretching them out. And for a change, we're making the brass do the ostinato kind of underlying texture section here as well. So in this part right here, anytime that you have a woodwinds that are kind of fading out, making sure that they decrescendo all the way down and completely out is really important, because it kind of gives like this like stuff is fading in and out of the view of like the clouds or something like that. And we once again have another really kind of cool call and section answer here. One thing that did change from the recording to the published version was originally this was a horn solo. After hearing the live version, I decided that it wasn't quite beefy enough, so I added it to the rest of the horns, and in the actual professional recording, it sounds the section sounds a lot better for it. The low brass down here have the bell tones again, so just something to note to make sure you're looking out for. So let's listen to Q up to the next big section. Okay, so for this section, there's not really much new in here that I haven't really discussed. The only thing I can say is there is a retardando right here, 2 before R. Make sure that you only do the retardando for that one measure and lock in the tempo really solidly, the measure before R. In reality, I probably should have put that chord note equals 72 about a measure ahead of where it's at right now, but that's fine. So that way the woodwinds have a chance to actually have a consistent metric tempo to follow for their kind of complicated runs they have here. So let's go ahead and listen to letter R up to the next hit point. Okay, so we're kind of now into the meat and potatoes of the piece. This is where we're starting to kind of not necessarily wrap the piece up, but we're starting to bring back a lot of the thematic material for its final development, and we're kind of hinting at that, hey, we're about to reach the summit of the piece. These woodwind runs look very intimidating on paper because it's 30-second notes. I don't believe they're that bad. They're very scalar in form, and as long as they're being lined up correctly with like the glockenspiel stuff that's going on the previous page, they'll be fine. Right here on measure 185 is another heroic moment for the French horns. It's in a triplet meter, but really make sure that you're metrically accurate with that as much as possible, since it is basically the same motive that we've had at the beginning, but now it's in a different metric form, but proportionally wise, it's still the same. So let's go ahead and listen to these next 4 measures up through the last big hit point. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about that section. Rehearsal S is obviously it's what in my head I consider to be the culminating moment of the whole piece, where we have this grand statement of the whole motive of the thing. It's very, very lyrical in nature, so it's very important that leading up to it that we don't run out of gas. So if you need to save something from the previous section, make sure you can, so that way we've got somewhere to build up into. From a conducting standpoint, if you wanted to add a little bit of a rallentando right on this measure right before it, that's perfectly fine. I think it would add a lot more to the piece as well. So leading into the last section of the piece, let's go ahead and listen to the accelerando to the end of the piece, and we'll discuss that. Okay, and so that's the end of the piece. So let's talk about that. So at this accelerando here, it's really, really important that you guys hit the target metric here by this 5/4 measure. We don't want to continue that accelerando through there if at all possible. And so making sure we do that helps build up a lot more drive for the piece and helps make this last section of 7/8 feel a lot more organic. And by the time we get to that tempo, because we don't want there to be a huge jump. So in this case, the only thing I would really mention is making sure that you're really overemphasizing the forte pianos so that the woodwind idea can be heard above it all. Especially at this last 4/4 here, go ahead and really back off on the trumpets and especially the trombones as well. Bring out those last 3/8 notes. Those are kind of important. And then finally, we have one last refrain of that first 2 measures right here. The only thing I would say for this is make sure your timpani really brings out those 2/8 notes on beat 4 of measure 203. Same with your snare drummer and your bass drummist as well. And for the rest of the piece, it's pretty much play it as is. It's let the percussion ring out a little bit on the end here. I've heard 2 versions where one was clamped and one wasn't. Haven't decided which one I like better yet. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this piece. It's, as you can see, it's a very, very hard piece. It's a grade 5 for a reason, but it is an approachable grade 5 in the sense that it's one of those pieces where it's a project piece, where it's, you take this, it sticks in your folder if you're in high school or in college, and you do it at the end of the semester, or you do it because you want to show off your group and say like, hey, look how hard this piece is so that we can play. And it really does allow everybody to kind of like within the group to show off, whether that's percussion, brass, woodwinds. Even the conductor gets to show off a little bit because the meters in this do not stay the same for long, and you have to really be on your toes with it. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody watching this today, and I really hope that this helps you out with your future performance of Summit. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.